bring that up to consciousness on Sunday. Change, what is that? Everything, everywhere. Not everything is changing. And we get to choose whether we greet the change with fear or opportunity. So I think it's great that we're all here. I'm really happy to be here every Sunday because we consciously choose to greet life with opportunity and have inspiring speakers like Jen Hutchins, who's going to speak on abundance, which is a wonderful opportunity of everything, abundance of everything, and everybody knows Susan Williams, who's going to be providing us with inspirational music. So I'd like to remind everybody to mute their phones, if you haven't already done that. And then together in the bulletin, we have our mission statement, and if you'd like to, we could read that together. Center for Universal Oneness
is a place for those who want support on their spiritual journey and join with others for mutual encouragement, inspiration, and guidance. The center draws on those practices based in new thought and metaphysical approaches. The higher Christ consciousness provides the foundation. We strive to live in the oneness of love.
And our mission statement is
extending into the world faith, love, peace, and joy.
Doug, would you bless us with a prayer?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let us pray together. Divine Spirit within us and among us.
It's you. I don't know what you did.
Divine Spirit. I know I can always put that off on Divine Spirit. We know the love of God in our hearts because we share it. We know the goodness of God in our minds because we do it. We know the beauty of God in our smiles when it returns to us from another. We know the gratitude of our being when we appreciate our existence. We know what we are. We know who we are. We know what we are to do. And we thank God for the opportunity to experience all of it every day. Amen.
Amen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think it was me. Sorry. I don't know why it does that. What if I believe this world is a kind and gentle place? And what if I believe a smile could be forever on my face? What if I believed in you? And what if I believed in me? Oh, what a wonderful life this would be. And what if I believed that God moves through all of time and space, and everywhere I look is a holy, sacred place? What if I believe the past, present, and to come are all divinely guided by the one who loves me, who lights my way, whose strength I feel every time I pray, whose peace and joy fill my heart. You see, in God I'm safe. shining bright the light of Christ. And what if I believe that all I lovingly provide returns to me magnified by the one who loves me, who lights my way, whose strength I feel every time I pray, whose peace and joy fill my heart. You see, in God I'm safe and I'm free. In the one who loves me, who lights my way, whose strength I feel every time I pray, whose peace and joy fill my heart. You see, in God I'm safe and I'm free. What if I believe? What if I believe? What if I believe? What if we all believed all the time and always came at life from that awareness of oneness? That's essentially what we're talking about today as we talk about abundance. Now, I would like to say that I really seriously considered giving the talk specifically on how we can make the Chiefs win today. And as I see the stream of red in here today, I'm thinking, well, maybe I should have gone with that one. I already have my talk planned, though. But go Chiefs. So you ever had those experiences where you think on something, like maybe you think about a friend and like 10 minutes later they ring you on the phone? Those are those little moments of abundance and connection that I want to talk about today. Little moments of abundance that are everywhere present. I once had an experience. I had a friend named Debbie that I knew through church. And Debbie and I lived about 45 minutes away from each other, and so we only saw each other on Sunday morning. And one day I was writing in my morning journal, and I wrote down, I wish I could see Debbie more often. Wouldn't you know it? The next 2 weeks proved to be full of Debbie. I had never seen her in like 6 months outside of Sunday service. And I was invited to a movie with a friend, and I got there, and Debbie was there as well. A couple days after that, I was strolling along and happened to stop in at a local coffee shop. And Debbie was at the coffee shop. And so whenever I start thinking in my life about moments where I'm getting in that state of there's not enough, or that idea that there's some sort of limited plan, I realize that's just my own limitation. And I think to myself, if I could manifest Debbie, what else is possible? What else is possible in our lives? One of the things that I love about the teaching of abundance and prosperity is it is a tangible thing. When we talk about spirituality, often we are talking about ideas. And it's hard to put senses to ideas. It's hard to say, I can taste this, touch this, smell this. But if I have in this hand nothing, using the power of imagination, and I have in this hand a $100 bill, There is nothing on one hand, there is abundance on the other. It is a tangible thing. I can touch it. I can smell it. I could crinkle it up and listen to it. I could taste it, but I don't recommend doing that one. So we can use our senses when we're thinking about testing it out. Because that's what practical spirituality is all about, right? It's putting it to the test. It's not just looking at historical figures and saying, yeah, sure, they did some great things, but it is how do I apply those teachings into my life today? How do I apply all of that wisdom and turn it from just a thought, just an idea, into an experience? And we can quantify experience, even if it doesn't have a crinkle to it, right? We know what an experience is. We can quantify the move from a feeling of lack in our bodies, a feeling of illness or dis-ease in some way in our body, and then a feeling of wholeness, of completion, of health on every level. We can feel that, know that. It becomes tangible to us because of the experience. We can do the same thing with our relationships. If we have a challenging relationship or a lack of relationship where we want to see one, we know what that sense feels like. And so then when we move into this cohesiveness of love and respect, and it's coming back and forth at us, we feel that difference, that shift from one to the other. That is abundance manifesting in different ways in our financial lives, in our health, in our relationships. We know what it feels like to feel disconnected from source sometimes. Now, I know we all are wiser than that, right? We all know that we are one. We all know that we are connected to source all the time. But how many are human in the room? Most. We've got some questionable things up here, yeah. At least it's personal self-doubt. So most of us have moments where we fall into that human thinking, that idea of limitation, that idea of separateness. We know what that feels like, often not pretty. And we know what it feels like when we bring our awareness to source. That shift that happens in consciousness that takes us from maybe feeling low or in despair, feeling alone in a situation, to feeling connected, feeling hope, feeling faith, regardless of circumstances. Practical spirituality are those experiences that allow us to shift consciousness. And in that shift, we create abundance in all aspects in our lives. As we look at some master teachers, we look at historically how was abundance demonstrated. When we think of the Gospels, when we think of the life and teachings of Jesus Christ, he turned water into wine, he healed the blind, he brought together communities of all sorts of folks that wouldn't normally come together through food, through conversation. He created abundance by bringing awareness to what he called the kingdom of God. And by teaching that kingdom is within. He said, ask, and you shall find. But seek first the kingdom. So in all things, when we're thinking of abundance, when we're thinking of how do I create financial abundance, how do I create that shift in my relationships that they are expressing more abundantly. Again, divine will. In all areas of our lives, if we are seeking abundance, we must first seek. spiritual awareness. The fun thing is we don't have to go anywhere because we are connected. We're already connected. All we have to do, as if it were that easy, is shift that consciousness. Now, sometimes when we hear stories of people that lived 2,000 plus years ago, it's easy to go, yeah, sure, work for him. Not working so much for me today, because we don't have those tools. So I am all about practical spirituality. In fact, I run an art ministry in which we use hands-on activities to connect with Source. We do things that as we're coloring or drawing, we are meditating, and it brings us deeper into that moment. We do things where we release with paint, just splattering it on the wall, release our human emotions so we can sink deeper into the moment. I love the tangible things, those things we can do to shift that consciousness. Because sometimes, for me, it works to sit in silence. And sometimes I sit in silence and my mind goes, okay, so the dishes need to be done, and this needs to happen later, and don't forget about that program that you have tomorrow, and don't forget about this. Anyone else? So when we give the mind an activity, a tangible thing to do, we can retrain it a little bit. We can make it work for us in shifting that consciousness. How many are familiar with Catherine Ponder's work? The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity. What I love about this book is she gives us lots and lots of things we can do to retrain the mind to focus on that shift from lack to abundance in all areas of our life. All areas. Now, being a visual artist myself, I was particularly drawn to the fact that she has two sections, one devoted to the creative law of prosperity, and then the one right after that, the imaging law of prosperity. All sorts of other ones, but I'm going to use some of Catherine's wisdom, combined with some things that I've done myself, to share with you some take-homes, some things you can do to shift that consciousness, other than sit in the silence. But please do that too. So the first one I want to share with you is something she actually credits to a student of hers. And it's called A Wheel of Fortune, not the game show. Does anybody remember this from the book? Several hands went up when I shared the book. Yeah. All right, because visuals help. I created my own Wheel of Fortune. So in the center, is an image that represents the divine in some way, shape, or form. I happen to use a sunset image because the light of the sun reminds me of spiritual light. So in the center, we have something that represents our highest self, our highest awareness. And then, like a wheel hub, there are spokes that radiate out, dividing the page. And then, according to her student, he divided the sections into different areas of his life. So I chose to do spiritual community, family and home, adventure and travel, and work and finances. You can do whatever you like. If relationships are higher, if health is higher on your abundance list of that shifting, you can put those on there. And then I used images printed, just photos from the computer, and some were my own pictures to put tangible visual things of places and people in my life in there. And some were images that I just pulled off the internet, rainbows and arms and stuff that represented different elements of what I wanted to see. And for each one, I prayed over, what do I want to see in that area of my life? and then I put the images down, and then I wrote an affirmation. Divine intelligence brings true happiness in this area of my life, whichever section I'm in. Writing some sort of affirmative prayer on the page as well. So one of the things I have on here, this is where the mic gets challenging. Let's see, over in this section, I put down a house, one that I own currently, that I've been trying to sell on and off for 6 years. Thank you, Divine Spirit, for whatever you are teaching me through this experience. I put an image of the living room of that house on my board, or on my page, my Wheel of Fortune, and I wrote the word sold over that image. And I wrote, Divine intelligence knows the right and perfect buyer for this property. Everyone is blessed by an orderly and just sale. Divine intelligence knows the perfect home and right and perfect time for us to move into it. So as we sell that house, that we can then move into something new. 6 years I tried this, folks. The house is currently under contract, and we are scheduled to close this month. So I love the tangibles. Now, another thing that is fabulous about having a tangible, having a visual, is I can now show this to you. I can say, hey, look, I created a visual, and here's my experience with that. And I can go back and I can remember, I asked for this. I prayed for this. I fully released it to divine intelligence to guide this process. And it has. So visual imagery is one way that we can create abundance in our lives. That shift in consciousness from I can't, but God can. When we tune into that one and the same, I step aside and I let God, through me, through my life, through those around me, bring this into the perfect situation. Another thing that Catherine Ponder talks about is the power of the word. If you have ever written your prayers, written affirmations, stuck them on your mirrors, I have a friend that writes her affirmations in dry erase marker on her mirror so she sees it every morning. You know the power of words. I had an experience of being on vacation and throwing my back out. Not fun, I do not recommend it. And so I found myself lying in my grandfather's bed while everybody else was like off doing the fun things. And I could not walk without assistance. That was the level that I was at the moment. I stood up gingerly one day to go use the restroom, and I noticed on the wall was the Prayer for Protection by James Dillard Freeman. And I paused in my ow, 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 ow standing moment to read the Prayer for Protection as I had never read that prayer before. As many years as I had recited those same words, it touched me at such a level in that moment and gave me strength. Strength enough to walk on my own without having to call for help to get to the restroom that day. Words have such amazing power. So if you have a favorite poem, a favorite affirmation, put it where you will see it and let it do its magic. The final tangible that I want to give you to take home today is the power of song. And Susan and I have been talking about this week. And she's agreed to help us out a little bit. So right following the talk, we're going to have an experience with the power of song. But song can take us from a space of limitation, of disconnect, to that awareness again. It is a tangible experience that we can sink into that has the ability to shift consciousness. Now, as a business owner, I had to file all my fun tax stuff this past week. And something kind of sprung up on me that I didn't even realize that I was supposed to file the night before the due date. And like everything in me jumped to that human mode. That human mode. You ever been there? To where, my husband was like, walked into the room, he's just like, hey, what's going on? I'll just talk to you later. It's like that tangible, that energy that you could feel in the space. My son left me alone for an hour and a half, never happens. But I would have this like repellent on me because I had let my energy sink so low into fear. And I got up at my husband's request, gentle nudging, hey, maybe take a break. Fine, fine, I'll take a break. And in that break, right, I'm like going over to do the dishes and like that energy was still hanging on me. And I realized that energy was hanging on me. I was like, ooh, I could feel it all of a sudden. It's like I was in it, I could feel the tension, but I didn't consciously notice what was going on. And so it was like that, I don't want to be hanging on to this. Why am I in this space? What can I do to shift? Because I certainly don't want to be putting this off on my family or even myself, right? And so I started humming in my mind Karen Drucker's song, I Am So Blessed. I am so blessed, I am so grateful for all that I have. And I just let that song of gratitude, of blessing wash over me. And by the time I was done with those dishes, I was like bouncing through the house, like just skipping. It shifted so much, that weight was lifted. And the next morning, I went back to the whole tax thing, and the answer was right there. Because I wasn't coming at it from that point of fear. I could see what was right in front of me the whole time. Spirit is amazing. Seek first the kingdom. Seek first that awareness, that oneness, and all else shall be added to you. That is the key to abundance in our spiritual lives, in our relationships, in our health, and our finances. Seek first the awareness of spirit right where you are. I want to end with a quote by Dyer. He said, abundance is not something we acquire. It is something we tune into. Abundance is not something we acquire. It is something we tune into. And with that, I'm going to invite Susan up to lead us in singing, I Am So Blessed. As we move into our time for meditation and contemplation, we will let song lead us in today. I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful. I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful for all that I have. I yourself to breathe in that truth. The awareness that right here, right now, all blessings are upon you. Allow yourself to feel the weight lifted off, to feel your heart glowing with love, to feel the warm light of spirit within. As we affirm and we rest in the truth, I am so blessed. We let our breath carry us deeper into this awareness as we move into the stillness of silence. On the next breath, begin to bring your awareness back to this moment, back to this room, back to the breath. As we affirm together, I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. And so it is.
Thank you, Jen. That was great. Wonderful reminder of abundance always available, and how to get in touch with it. Thank you so much. Now is the time in our service for the offertory, so if you take a moment and gather together and rustle around, and then we can recite our offertory prayer together. Together, divine
give and all that I receive, and I am joy-filled and grateful.
Just guiding me to getting a new phone. All right, a lot of you know this, so sing along. And you can stand up and clap and dance if you feel so moved. God is my source, God is my power, God gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. God gives me everything I need. Now it's love. Love is my source, love is my power, love gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. Love gives me everything I need. Now peace. Peace is my source. Peace is my power. Peace gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. Peace gives me everything I need. Now God, God is my source. God is my power. God gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. God gives me everything I need. God gives me everything I need. God gives me everything I need.
Thank you, Susan. Raise the energy level a little.
Well, you gotta get it up to go to that Chiefs game later.
Oh, yeah.
Who's gonna win?
Who's gonna win? I don't know. All I know is the Chiefs are playing. I don't even know who they're playing against, so.
Now's the time in our service for community concerns. So if there are any, you'd like to share with the group, people that you'd like to hold in prayer, uplifting ideas, things that you want to share with us that we can hold in prayer, other than the obvious.
The
It's always
Chiefs.
been. Terry.
Yeah, I would like to start a prayer or an intention to make the coronavirus go away, give us some sort of aid. I don't think the coronavirus should be the end of civilization as we know it, and if enough people focus attention on it, maybe it will just fade away.
A prayer for eliminating
Eradication.
coronavirus. Be careful how you're wording your prayers. Yes, ma'am.
Rama mentioned something to me on the way in this morning that might be a good idea for us to consider a women's healing circle for Barb in the next couple of weeks. Is there anybody who would like to participate and have some ideas on what to do? Let her or me know and we'll try to get it together.
A healing circle for Barb Herzog. Anything else? Yeah.
I think it'd be appropriate to have a prayer of support and peace for the family and loving family and loved ones of Kobe Bryant.
Support for Kobe Bryant and his family. Anything else? Let's just recite our prayer together then. It's in your bulletin. Centering our hearts and minds in prayer, we let go of any thoughts of worry or challenge and simply rest in stillness. We know that our source of strength and peace comes from God alone.
We give thanks for divine order and trust that we are all held in the power of the prince.
Just a reminder, Susan and I are always available as your prayer chaplains, either in person or by phone. Next Sunday, we're going to be blessed with Diana Kennedy as the speaker and Neil as our musician. So that will be something to look forward to. Thanks again to Jen and Susan. Would you bless us with a closing prayer?
Please stand for the prayer of protection. The light of God surrounds us.
The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.
Go Chiefs!
Go Chiefs!